Okay, well, good evening, everyone. I want to thank you, brave souls, for venturing out in a corona world. Those of you who might be watching this on video on YouTube years from now, or weeks from now, or whatever, it happens to be also a Jewish holiday called Purim, and we're in the midst of this corona situation. And the one other thing I have to admit is I am very much a pedestrian when it comes to baseball, so you'll excuse me if I don't know the nuances and understandings of just an average guy watching it on TV once in a while. So tonight, venturing out into the wilds here of Wayne, New Jersey, and leaving the safe harbor of corona-laden New York City, is Shlomo Lipetz. And I challenge you to say that 5 times fast without messing it up. But anyway, Shlomo is the vice president of and in charge of the booking for a club that started in New York and now is national, City Winery. Any of you been to a City Winery? Okay, just some of us veterans. Okay, well, you'll probably want to change that in the future because they've just opened, or in the process of opening, a brand new facility in Manhattan. Their Tribeca facility has been taken over by the Disney organization, and they found a brand new spot, and it's going to be state of the art, and got great talent lined up for its opening festivities, and so keep your eye on it. I encourage you to maybe look online and check it out, because in this day and age, there's not too many places like that that will provide the entertainment of that caliber, as well as it's just a decent place to see something, and you can sit down, you can have a glass of wine, and you can eat. But so Shlomo is not a native of New York. Although he probably feels like one at this point, having spent enough time here, but he was born and raised for first few years in Tel Aviv.
First 21 years.
21 years. And as you told me, you came to America because you were offered a scholarship in San Diego.
Yep.
So maybe before we get into that, you could tell me a little bit about how you got from Tel Aviv to San Diego, what was going on in your life before the City Winery?
You know, Tel Aviv is a great coastal city in the Middle East and very much a happening place with a vibrant music scene and a good culinary experience at middle school, high school, and then, like most Israelis, had to take part in a 3-year mandatory military service. I found out just a couple weeks before I was supposed to go into the Army serving in a military unit. I got word that I got a special athletic scholarship that basically would allow me to continue to play baseball throughout my military service and follow my dream of becoming a baseball player, which was my dream at the time. So after 3 years, basically the first week after I got out of the military service, where most Israelis end up going and traveling around the world and going to India and South America, I decided to go to San Diego and follow my dream and played, and basically got admitted to UC San Diego, where I played 4 years and went to school over there. Great campus, good city to go to if you're into the surfing and outdoors. So that's pretty much how I got to the States, and was lucky enough to play ball for a long time, and music was just a hobby.
But, you know, you're not referencing some of the amazing teams and international situations. I mean, you're not just a kid who went to college and played ball on the...
Yeah, I mean, if you ask the average Israeli and you tell them that you know a Israeli baseball player, they would most likely tell you that they didn't know that baseball exists in Israel, or you're full of shit, basically. So I was actually visited the States when I was 10 years old. My uncle took me to see a Met game in '86, got caught up on the game, came back, asked my classmate at second grade if he knew what baseball was. He told me his dad plays softball. We ended up basically starting the first team ever in Israel. And I've been playing for the national team since I was 10 years old. So that's kind of been a leitmotif for me throughout my life now for 30 years. So while I would say most athletes, musicians have a role model, which I think is a big part of wanting to become something. I never had a role model because baseball never really existed, and back then there was no internet, there was only one TV station, so I would basically my only way to connect to baseball was through some baseball cards that family would send me. So my dream was actually never to play professional baseball, was to play baseball in college. I guess that's what happens when you're not exposed to baseball and to the options and the opportunity you have as a major league player. So once I actually made it through my military service, still played baseball. I was actually even considering leaving Israel before I was turning 18 because I thought to myself, well, most professional athletes really hit their stride when they're 18 years old, and if I go to the Army, what prospect do I have to really play at age 21? But like I said, I got into this program that only about 20 or 30 athletes get a year. That allowed me to continue to train. And then when I walked on in campus, I was like, hi, my name is Shlomo Lipetz. I had a much heavier accent then. I was wearing really even tighter clothes because I was coming straight from the dance scene of the club scene of Tel Aviv. I want to play baseball, and it was a complete different shock. Obviously, if you're an athlete in the United States, you get looked at since you're a young lad, and I was already a grown man at that point. But they took a chance on me, and ended up playing quite a few years, and luckily I still play to this day, and I think as a 41-year-old still is a big hobby for me, and I'll get to go, if it doesn't get canceled, to play and represent Israel in the Olympics this summer. So I just hope it's not going to be one of those, like, in 20 years. I remember that one time I almost went to the Olympics and the coronavirus just...
Well, you were on the Olympic qualification team in Italy last year, right?
Yeah, I mean, years after I stopped playing professional ball, I got the opportunity in 2013 and 17 to play for Team Israel in the World Baseball Classic. In 2017, we beat Korea and Netherlands and Cuba and finished 6th in the world. And then this past summer, we were able to qualify. We won 22 out of 25 games. One may ask, how do I still play baseball with a real adult job? And my response would be, if you start a new job, I think the first instinct is to say, oh, well, I want to prove myself, and I'm not going to go on this annual family vacation that I go every year. I'm not going to go to this or this or to a certain thing because I want to impress. Create facts on the ground from day one. And from day one, when I started working for City Winery, even before, when I was interning for Michael Dorf, who's the owner, I told him, I'll give you my heart and soul, but once a year, I go play baseball for Team Israel. And so that's...
It's ingrained in you, because I just realized you were in Little League when you were...
Yeah.
So this is a passion of yours that is still with you. And
I think 30 years would qualify as a passion, I guess so, yeah. But it's, I think it's important for every person, no matter what you do, to have some type of hobby. And I was lucky to have played and have a hobby that allowed me to, go around the world and play and have fun.
So how does a guy who's, so well versed in the sport of baseball all of a sudden make this career thing where you're working as an intern in a New York City nightclub?
Well, I think when I was 25 and about a year, I started college when I was 21. So unlike you guys, I started late. I think it was 25 or 26 at the time. And I said, and my girlfriend at the time said, well, you're not making millions yet, right? Because, most baseball players who play and follow their dream as a minor league or minor leagues don't make it to the big leagues. I wasn't making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I just graduated a year before, and like most people who graduated from college, I graduated in poli-sci, international relations, and there's nothing really a profession that it could take me. So my girlfriend at the time was like, what do you love doing? Which sounds like a simple cliche question. And that was a couple of years after Napster kind of got launched, and I was obsessed about collecting music. Napster, what Napster gave me was the ability to basically, that was before, Spotify, for those who don't know, but it's basically allowed you to access people's library and download all their music. So let's say you were looking for a certain artist, and it would give you, okay, this guy has this artist, and then you would discover 50 other artists that you've never heard of. So at the time, again, it's digital music, so you could be a hoarder without, ever anyone know. If you're hoarding records or hoarding tapes or hoarding stamps, you probably have, piles. If you're hoarding music, it fits in a couple of small hard drives. So I took a couple of classes actually in a junior college in San Diego, and my dream at the time was, okay, well, maybe I'll become a music supervisor, because anywhere I would go, if it was a restaurant, if it was to a restaurant, watching TV, it would always just have this kind of like, well, I can't believe they're playing this song, or I can't believe they're doing that, and just I was very aware of just how much music has an impact on everything in our lives, even if we're not aware of it. And most people are not real aware of it. And I had a professor who was a great professor at the time and said, you know what, don't even get into music supervision. Music supervision, for those who don't know, it's basically licensing music for shows. And since it's so hard to license and so hard to find a lot of times, the people who own the music, really you end up, and at the time I think there were a couple of movies I really liked. Now the way they do it, there's these massive databases where they have similar music to the originals. So let's say you type in, I want a angry teenager, and it will pop up with a bunch of music. So it's a very competitive profession. My girlfriend got into Parsons Fashion School in New York, moved with her, and I did what I guess someone who has no idea how to start in the music business, and I went on Craigslist and responded to an ad that said, small Jewish music label is looking for an intern. I walked in. It was probably the first time I wore a suit since my bar mitzvah. I was sweating, and it was Michael Dorf, and actually his assistant interviewed me. And
He had a label back then.
yeah, I mean, it was, so my boss, Michael Dorf, founded the Knitting Factory a long time ago. Knitting Factory was, I would say, came in a time in the early 80s where it was like it was a game changer in the New York music scene. It was anywhere from like the Lou Reeds to the dude from around the corner who played on a saw. And it was a very wide variety, and it gave a home to a lot of great artists. I mean, the Roots' first gigs over there, Beck's first gigs were in the Knitting Factory. And so that's kind of his inspiration. And then he grew, and as a 21-year-old from Milwaukee, he, I think, didn't have the money to open up on his own, so he had a bunch of investors, which eventually bought him out after he opened up the Knitting Factory in LA. So post-Knitting Factory, he had a small label, two artists by the name of Hannah Rothman and Pharaoh's Daughter. And I really didn't do much. It was an internship 3 times a week, but for some reason I said to myself, you know what, I'm just going to stick to this, see where it takes me. I was there for 10 hours a day for 5 days a week, held 2 jobs to make some, ends meet in New York City. And after a full year of interning with really doing not much besides just blind faith and something good is going to happen, I went back home, and he called me and he said, hey, I'm opening up this place called City Winery. Do you want to be a part of it? So, I'm a firm believer of internships, and I think over the years I've had probably 6 or 7 interns who've interned for a year, and are all working in the industry. And I'm older than you guys, but I'm not old as you are, and I could still say that internship is really the best way to get the foot through the door. I mean, it's so competitive. People spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on school. I'm not saying leave school, but ultimately it's just about, are you able to impress someone? And there's no way better than to give yourself free, as a free labor, and prove yourself and go above and beyond. So I've pitched that, and I think that helped me find some really great people and committed people. And I'm not saying you should go intern, but it's definitely a good way to, not go back to school after you don't know what to do, or if you're trying to get into a job that is very competitive. I think today more than ever, they're not really looking for people. It's much easier to get through your foot through the door, even if without your doctorate, even without a second or third degree. It's just about finding and proving yourself. So that's kind of how I got into.
So when you said you want to be part of this, so what was your part of it? What did you start?
Well, of course, after interning for a year, not even getting my subway card paid, he still found a way for the first 3 years to pay me slave money. Just really nothing.
But you paid a lot of money to go to college.
Exactly. So that's how I justified to myself. Right. I'm like, you know what? Instead of going back to school and really suffering through that and still not knowing what I want to do, this is what I want to do. I love this. And so City Winery started as a club that was supposed to have music only 3 times a week, and the rest of the time was supposed to be open as a restaurant. We opened up in 2008, and there was a massive financial crisis at the time. And
sounds familiar.
Kind of like now, and people were just looking to go out to eat, and I think we fell in the right place in the right time. And New York has such a competitive music scene, but there was really nothing besides what used to be the Bottom Line, and that closed just a couple of years earlier. This kind of sit-down, adult, room where you could sit down comfortably, eat good food, be treated well, and not come in. The show is advertised at 8 o'clock, and the opener goes on at 10:30, and the headliner goes on at midnight. Or you don't come into a place where, it stinks from beer. Which again, it has a good scene. It has a good place in the music scene. But we filled up really a square in a place and time that did not exist, and I think was a big part of why we're successful. And the way I learned the profession was, the first year I think I had my boss's email, and I sent emails on his behalf. People didn't even know I existed. So I was like Michael for the first 12 months. Then I graduated.
When you say send emails, to whom?
To agents,
So you were reaching out to talent.
Reaching out to talent, spending a lot of time in the venue. I was spending a lot of time with artists, just asking like, what makes for you a traveling artist who's basically does not have a home and is always on the road and is always in these green rooms and always in the clubs? What makes a club one better than the other? And I think I did not have a life. The first few years I was probably there 320 nights a year, but it was great feedback from musicians that are spending 150 days on a year on tour. They were saying they hate when they come into a venue and the only person they meet is this scary security guy, and there's no real face to the venue. They're spending their time, and then all they meet is a security guy, and that's it. And then there's some kind of, green room server. They told me that, they hated when they go in and played sold out shows, and after the show they want to go have a beer on the bar, and the bartender charges them for a beer. Like, how much does a beer cost a bar owner, especially after a sold out show? Is it 50 cents, 70 cents? So that's what they remembered, from a place. Not being treated well, and that's really kind of the fundamentals, and something I'm very proud of, which exists in all the city wineries. And I could talk later about how challenging it is to kind of copy paste and try to create this culture in every location that we're opening without actually being there. and installing these kind of like these fundamentals of how we want to treat the patrons, how we want to treat the artist. And when you have someone who's like 6'4" and his name is Shlomo and he's there, and the first couple of years I was saying hello to them, helping them move all the gear inside, helping them load. I was the one scheduling the sound engineer. I was the one taking their orders from, in the green room. I was the one paying the check. They always remember the person who gives the check. And ultimately spend some time for them. And now you're a face and you're a name. And now when the manager tells them, oh, where do you want to play? Do you want to play LPR? Do you want to play City Winery? Do you want to play Highline? They're like, let me play this. I remember the Shlomo guy. He's a cool guy. Let's play that room. And that personalization was something I think was key. And what I heard later, that those same artists that played the first couple of years, they travel, they hang out sometimes in the same places, they interact, and they're word to mouth. Hey, there's this club in New York. They really take care of good care of you. They feed you the steak. They don't give you the children's menu, and they give you that extra beer if you want, and they start on time, and their staff is professional. And guess what? When you're playing, the bartender doesn't decide to pour 5 buckets of ice during an acoustic show, and the servers, when they're not serving the tables, they're standing behind poles to not interfere. And oh my God, I opened for this show for this artist at City Winery, and as the opener, there was not a single person who was talking in the room, and they were respecting me the same way they were respecting the headliner. And this one person was talking, and they shished him, which was unheard of. So that's kind of how I kind of grew. So going back to the email, so I started as Michael, then I was assistant to Michael Dorf, then I had to be Shlomo, but copy Michael on all the notes, and then slowly I'm like, now I don't even tell him what's going on. But that's, so, and that was a privilege that really we don't have now, because back then we were a new business. There wasn't the pressure that we have now. We started with 3 shows, and the first year I think we had 120 shows. Second year we had 250 shows, and we've not had a dark night at City Winery for 6 or 7 years, including New Year's Day, including Christmas, where we do some Jewish comedy show. So I had the privilege to kind of really grow and kind of learn the profession, whereas now we open up a City Winery in Philadelphia, we're expected to sell at every single show 7 days a week from day one. Because now we have investors, and now we have, $8 million build out, and so on and so forth.
What's interesting is you talked about bands come in and they develop a liking to the way you run things, and they share that information with other bands that they meet while on the road. And I call that networking. And I try to emphasize to students today that whether it's working in a club with bands or anything you do, if you have the opportunity to be an intern, networking is how you get from point A to point B. If people hear good things about you, or you meet the person sitting next to you in class here, or you just don't know. So you meet the same people as you go on the way up, you might meet on the way down, but the point is you look to the left, you look to the right, and see who that is, and maybe you're going to realize that somebody's there, they're going to be there for you, or maybe they're just passing through, but you don't know. So I always say, be nice to everybody, as you've proven, and in the long run, it pays off because people talk.
And we paid well, and it's there are many reasons. I mean, there are many ways it could go wrong if you're in the music business, and I think when I first couple of years when I was going to conferences and I was meeting all these counter folks who are working in the industry. All over the United States, and I just saw the spectrum. There's no school for talent buying. There's no school for these things. It's really intuition and instincts, right? I mean, you have to be able to have the courtesy if you see someone, if you see an artist is feeling uncomfortable, is like knowing when do you impose yourself and when do you leave them go. There's when is it a right time and when is it a wrong time, and really just have your eyes and ears open. Again, these all seem like cliches, but I would not get the job if I wasn't really have this kind of blind faith and just persistency on believing to doing the right thing, and worked out for me in this regards.
So what's a typical day in the life of Shlomo?
Well, typical day today is very different than typical day 8-10 years ago. Today, a typical day is probably between 600 and 700 emails a day. I basically have a glorified office job. To give you a little idea on the structure, so we do about 600 to 700 shows a year in each location, because we have a 300 capacity and a 150 capacity.
We should talk about how many locations are there now.
So we have 7 locations with 13 venues. Every venue is basically doing 7 days a week programming, unless there's a private event, a wedding, a corporate event, a wine tasting, whatever. Baseball in a lot of ways is like music business, booking. It's a game of failures. I mean, if you're hitting 3 out of 10, you're a Hall of Famer. If you're actually confirming 3 artists out of 10 offers you send out, you're a successful talent buyer. So to imagine every location has to book 600 shows, 600 times 8 or 9 or 10, and I basically have to approve every single offer. So if we have offers coming in, I basically, so what we do is, as a team, because we have 7 talent buyers, it's such a big job that every city has their own, we call it programmer, not a booker, because that's another whole thing, right? If you're a talent buyer, some of these rock clubs are talent buyers, and basically, like a place like Bowery Ballroom or Music Hall of Williamsburg or Webster Hall, they do very little proactive booking. They basically sit down, and it's a hot room, and agents send a note and say, hey, we are routing this artist. Tame Impala is planning to play in New York. Can you please give us avails in this and this dates? And that's it. If they don't, and a lot of times during the summer when artists don't tour as much, you'll see dark nights all the time. Like Bowery Ballroom is probably closed 5 out of 7 days during the summer because they don't do proactive booking. And if artists don't reach out to them, or agents don't reach out to them to book shows, they don't book shows. We like to view our job in City Winery as programmers, because we have these amazing opportunities and we have to be able to book 7 days a week. We have to program it. And I think that says a little bit of how we approach music. It's, for example, we're doing the music of, we did Patti Smith's 70th birthday. So we put together 12 artists to all celebrate with Patti Smith her birthday. Or Lenny Kaye did this project with garage rock called The Nuggets in the late 60s. So we reenacted the 3 albums of The Nuggets, and we put together a bunch of artists. And the thing is that
that's a program.
That's a program, yeah.
Right.
And it's curated. We're reaching out to artists. We're using our relationships. And to be honest, what we've learned is that artists need the venue as much as the venue needs the artist. And I'll give you an example. For years, every time there was some kind of catastrophe, let's say there was, the earthquake in Japan, okay? Artists don't really, besides social media, they don't have a way to express, and they need a stage to be able to express. They want to raise money for the efforts, the relief efforts. We're there for them, and we use each other, so we provide for them a stage for them to play, donate their time, and raise money for different causes. That's kind of how we approach things. So every programmer sends an offer. Everyone else on the team is copied, so they're kind of aware of what's going on. Because if you're a creative person and you're sitting in the office, and there's like the beverage director and the service director and programmers and musicians need to be stimulated. And I think a good way that we've overcome this otherwise stagnant environment is basically copying each other on emails. Oh, blah, blah, you're putting an offer for Todd Rundgren in Chicago. Oh, I'll reach out to the agent. Maybe it's a good idea to have this person play too. So most of my day are emails. I oversee also all the marketing department. But then again, I need to go out and network with people, go see shows at night. When we have a venue open, I spend a lot of time walking around, making sure that, small stuff like, our postcards promoting the right shows. Are we promoting klezmer brunch doing a Taj Mahal show? Probably not the best idea, And when you're doing a show, everyone's running around doing their own thing. So I just kind of use it to hover around and kind of just make sure that things are the way we want it to be, because most people don't come from an environment that cares so much about the artist and so much about a listening environment and a culture of music, which is something that's really important for us.
What's the average age of an artist that plays City Winery?
I think we've done a pretty good job. I would say the average age of the artist and the fans the first 5 or 6 years was probably in their late 40s to early 70s. But over the years, we've really, I think, two things contribute to the fact that the average age of the artists and the fans came down. One, wine, which used to be, even 10 years ago, used to be considered, only old people drink wine. I think wine is everywhere. There's so many wine bars, and the culture of wine is much better. And secondly, it's a great place for, if you're on a date, it's a great place to go on a date, right? So folks like Citizen Cope, or folks like Rhett Miller's, or the Teddy Thompsons. You know, we have a much more diverse mix of artists, and that has to do also with just the willingness of the artists. And we broke a lot of glass ceilings of what artists would normally want to play City Winery, but also it has to do with the fact that we position ourselves. So let's say there's a band that only travels with a full band, and it's a really rockin' show. So when they're coming supporting an album with a full band, they'll play a Webster Hall, they'll play a Town Hall, they'll play a much bigger room because they're touring with a much bigger crew. But then I say to them, why don't you come back on a shorter cycle and maybe do an acoustic tour? Someone like Josh Ritter, who normally plays with a full band, we approach it saying, hey, let's not do a normal Josh Ritter show. He's working on a new album. The whole show is just new material, just to see. You could perform 20 songs, just new material, see if it sticks. So that was kind of the angle that we found on that specific case to get Josh, who normally plays more younger, hipper clubs, to do City Winery.
Yes, sir.
What's the atmosphere of your City Winery venues? Is it more like casual or suit and tie? Like
No. Very casual. I would say so. I would say walk you through an experience of City Winery. Okay, so we have our own ticketing system. That was something that's very fits our entrepreneurial spirit of City Winery. We didn't use Ticketmaster. We didn't use TicketWeb, Eventbrite. We decided that, you know what? Why we want to own the information. We don't want to pay other ticketing system $2.50 or $7 or $10 for commission, and it took us a lot of money investment. But we have our own ticketing system. So when you go online, you choose a ticket, and we're paperless. You choose a seat from a map. You get a confirmation number, and you don't ever need to print a ticket. You don't even have to do a barcode. So you walk in, and as you walk in, there are 3 hostess with iPads. They're saying, "Hi, sir, welcome to City Winery. How can I help you?" And then you say your name, and then from there you have another group of about 6 people that are waiting next to them, all young, beautiful men and women, taking you to your specific seat, having a conversation with you, saying, "Hey, sir, welcome back to City Winery," or "Is this your first time? Do you know we make wine?" So it's from day one, you know, I would say the average person who goes to see a show, you're probably like, "ID, please. Come in, do this, do that." And so from the start, it's a much more hospitable. I mean, we see ourselves, we're a music venue, but we see ourselves in the hospitality world. So once you walk in, unlike most clubs where it's all dark walls and it's kind of stingy and smells like, it's all wood. It's warm wood, and it's like, I can't say comfortable seating, but it's family style seating. You get to eat food, and not like greased up food. It's not the best food. I would not say I would go to City Winery for a standalone culinary experience, but it's definitely an upgrade than most venues. And then guess what? It said on the website that the doors open at 6, and it says the show starts at 8. Oh my God, it's 8:05. The show actually started. You know, so the time management of the people that come, we're very, very conscious about it. You know, we're thinking our fans, even if you don't, let's say you're too young to have kids, but let's say you have kids, you have a babysitter, you want to do other stuff, you want to be able to be home at 10:30 because you want to watch whatever on TV. So that's kind of your experience of City Winery, normal, I would say a normal experience of City Winery.
And there's no dress code.
There's no dress code.
And no suit and tie.
It's it's one of those places where I think all the musicians always choose to invite their parents and their family to go to City Winery. It's like, yeah, Mom, this is where I always play, you know. But it's I think the first instinct is, you know, oh, do I have to dress up? You know, it's not Carnegie Hall. It's very loose in that regards.
Another question: is there like a drink minimum too?
No drink minimum. That's another thing that also, when we started City Winery, we're like, you know what? Even if I was planning to spend $200, the fact that someone told me that I have to spend $200 pisses me off. So we have a lot of people who order water, but that was a conscious decision that probably is not the most smartest financial. But if you want to come in, you want to drink iced tea, 5 iced teas, you could do that. There's going to be no minimum. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about wine. I mean, we know that wine is much more of a coveted situation now, but so will you have somebody in the back stamping on grapes? I mean, how does that work?
Well, when you think of the idea, it's kind of like dumb. Like, okay, well, you're making wine in an urban environment where the rent is really high, and guess what? The grapes are not grown in the subway. So, but we decided to do this as a concept, and I think it's part of who we are. It's a story, right? So, 70% of the wine that people drink at City Winery is wine that we make on the spot. So we bring the grapes. Every location buys about 120 to 150 tons of grapes from Chile and Argentina and California and Oregon and upstate New York, and we ship the grapes. And we have a head French winemaker, so it very much fits the whole. Oh yeah, may do wine. And same like programmers, we have a junior winemaker in every location, and we go through the whole process. We do the sorting of the grapes, and we bring in volunteers, and we involve the fans to be, you know, touch the grapes, and we do the fermentation in the tanks. And after that, it goes and we press the wine, and we actually use the peels of the grapes in our dough and our pizza dough, so it's self-sustained. And we then pump the wine into barrels where the wine ages for 10 to 14 months. And then we serve the wine on tap. So most of the wine that you drink at City Winery is wine that doesn't have any sulfites, no preservatives. And the cool thing about it is, like, most artists, when they go on the road, or fans, they end up buying the same t-shirt, the same keychain, the same CD. We actually, for every artist that plays City Winery, we make a special wine label for them and sell it as merchandise. So, and people always love seeing their face on a bottle of wine. So for the fan who's bought every single t-shirt and every single piece of merchandise, now they could buy like a little souvenir. We pay the artist $10 for every bottle we sell, and we use that as kind of a cool story. And the design of the venue is, okay, so when you walk into every venue, you'll see some windows with stock barrels, and you'll have people giving out samples of wine, and kind of that's, again, part of our story.
So you said each facility has a winemaker on staff. Is each facility making their own, or is there?
Yep.
So the wine I get in Nashville will be distinctively different than the wine I get.
Not distinctly, I would say, as a head winemaker, you have a certain style that you want to impose as far as the winemaking philosophy about winemaking. I mean, there's a million philosophies, so those people are really artists as well. But I would say different grape varieties sometimes, and definitely you could tell some distinctions between wine to wine.
And just so there's no confusion, there's also a regular bar. So if you don't want wine, you can have usual cocktails.
Anything.
So who would you consider, like in New York, who's the competition? Because it's a very unique situation what City Winery has. So somebody's looking for entertainment value and they have discretionary amount of dollars. They have a choice between City Winery and ? Who would you say?
Well, I would say as a musician, if you're let's
booking, and then
yeah. So as a musician, if you're an agent, you're looking. You know, there's like a place like Town Hall, right? It's a historic building. It's a beautiful theater. It fits 1,200 people, and but it's a union hall, and that means it's a very expensive room. So in reality, if there's a, let's say, Graham Nash or, wants to play, New York, he'll get an offer from City Winery, get an offer from Town Hall. Even though we could probably pay more money at City Winery, sometimes artists just want to play a certain room. Like I want to play a theater. I don't want to play a supper club, for example. So that artist would play a certain room. A lot of times it comes down to availability and money and a bunch of other, and history with the market. As far as direct competition talent-wise, that's one of the reasons why we've been able to sustain ourselves as a business in every location. There's really no one who's doing exactly what we're doing.
Right.
If you're just someone who comes to New York and wants to spend their money, let's put it this way. If you're with a bunch of bros and want to just kind of talk and catch up, City Winery is probably not the right place for you. And we've actually actively told people to leave and give back their money because we feel that it hurts the experience of the artist and experience of the other fans or real fans of the music. So I would say if you want a great listening experience and maybe introducing yourself to an artist you've never heard of, and because I think we have a pretty high level of threshold of who we want to have play City Winery, the likelihood of you coming to City Winery and seeing a show you hate, I would say, is fairly low. Whereas if you go to some of a club in the East Village, it could be either great, oh my God, I can't believe this guy's gonna be a superstar, like I can't believe it, my ears are bleeding, so you don't have that.
What is the capacity of most of the city wineries?
300 and 150, and 150 is kind of our new model. And as a standalone, so if we open up a music venue, the reason why there's not a lot of great 100 or 150 capacity rooms is because the opportunity to make money is very low. Most artists that play 150 seat rooms, you could only charge $10, $15 a ticket. But if you now put it in a business that already, like a City Winery that has already a 300 seat room, then you could start using the same kitchen, the same staff, and makes much more sense. So those are kind of the main capacities that we deal with.
Do artists work for guarantee plus percentage?
So the few types of deals that we play, and I could give you a little secret. So if you're playing any of the Bowery Presents places, you don't get a guarantee because they think they're such a hotshot, and they are, and they have massive lists and they have multiple size rooms. So if you're a young artist, you willing to play and then go out, they just do flat door deals, 65% of the door. If you make $100, you walk out with $65. If you sold $50 worth of tickets, then you walk out with 65% of $50. We, on the other hand, we do a bunch of deals. We either do a straight door deal, which means you get a certain percent of the door no matter what you sell. If you sell 10,000 tickets, $10,000 worth of tickets, you'll get 70% of that. If you sell $500 worth of tickets, you'll have 70% of that. So that's one type of deal. Then you have a deal that's called a versus deal. So we're guaranteeing $3,000 versus 70%. So if you gross more than $3,000, you're getting 70%, but at least you're walking with a minimum of $3,000. And the third type of deal is just a straight guarantee. $20,000. If the venue sells 5 tickets, you still owe $20,000 to the artist. If you sell out and you sell $50,000 worth of tickets, you still pay $20,000 guarantee.
What do most people do?
So the logic would be the bigger artist you are, you'd be like, I just want a percentage deal and I want just to walk away with the most amount of money. But the bigger you are, the more you're kind of strict about just, I want a guarantee. They don't want to fuck around. So it's, I would say for the bigger artists, it's a flat guarantee. For the medium artists, it's a guarantee versus deal. And then we have some play around. Like, let's say I'm offering an artist $2,000 versus 60%. They say, I want more money. I want higher guarantee. I'm like, well, I can't give you a higher guarantee, but I'll give you more on the back end. So if we sell, I'll give you 70% instead of 60%. So if we sell all the tickets, you'll walk out more, but I'm lowering the risk on my side by keeping the guarantee low. So in case it bombs, I'm not in the hole for more money.
What happens with merch?
So merch is a funny thing. So you have two. If you're having an artist over here, they'll say, "Well, I'm carrying the merch. The people that are buying the merchandise are my fans. I've been schlepping around everywhere in a bus or in a car with the merchandise. I should be getting all the money, right? I'm on the venue side. I'm saying, I'm giving you the store. I'm paying rent. I'm giving you this table that you're sitting next to. Giving you this chair. I sold the tickets and promoted and marketed all these people that are here because I helped let them know. So we should get a percentage." So in reality right now, for a long time, by the way, venues were not getting any money from it. And now it's a normal merch deal is 80% goes to the artist and 20% goes to the venue. The big thing now is all these artists are now having these VIP experiences,
Right.
where they're selling these VIP experiences. The agent is not getting anything. And all of a sudden someone says, "Oh, by the way, we're coming in, we're engaging this company, they're going to charge $200 for this VIP experience, and the artist is keeping 100% of it." And then I say, "Well,
Hello?
we're bringing the staff here, it's our store, we're having a security guy make sure that everything's okay." "Oh, it's okay, if you don't want it, we could go to the bar across the street." So there's now this whole thing now that's the newest thing in the industry that there's a lot of fight over. It's how do you deal with these third-party VIP experiences?
Meet
So
and
that's
greet.
kind of meet and greets. Give me a signed poster plus a photo plus a chance to
Bump fists.
yeah, bump fest.
You got a question back there?
Yeah, so as for the artists that have a smaller fan base that might not be headliners necessarily, are you guys booking them based on how many tickets they can sell, or is it more like talent-based for the clients coming in?
If you're an artist who's completely unknown and don't have any following, I mean, it's very hard for a business. We have such a large overhead. Our business model does not allow just taking reckless risk, but there's rooms, and God bless those rooms. I mean, Rockwood, for example, and there used to be more rooms like that in New York, like pianos, and where tickets are either free or cheap, and people come over there because they know they're going to see great music no matter who it is, and the name doesn't really matter. It's really important, and there's not a lot of rooms like that. From our perspective, our policy is we don't impose on the headliners an artist that they don't want. So let's say you send me a note, "Hey, Shlomo, I have this band, it's really great, we don't have much of following, I would love to open for Lucinda Williams or to open up for Citizen Cope next month." I don't make that decision. What I will do, I will give it my little quality control listen, see if it's good, and then I would send it to the management of the headliner because they like to have control. And I understand that. If you're traveling, you want to make sure that the artist that's opening for you is, not a craze, that somehow it fits, right? So if, for example, if the headliner is playing solo, we're probably not going to book a full band to be open for the show. If you're a jazz trio, we're probably not booking a hip hop, trio to open up for jazz. So I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, we deal with a lot of these. I mean, and the question that I get a lot is how do I get into City Winery? How do I play City Winery? And people, there's no one way. I mean, in the one hand, I get people who send 10-paragraph emails, but then again, I get 600-700 emails a day. Most likely, and I think this is a pretty good, I would say, example of the industry these days. Most people in an email that they don't know from someone that they don't know on a topic that they don't really have patience for, probably are tapering off within the first paragraph. So everything after that is probably getting lost in the jumble. Then you have the old schoolers who send a CD. I'm like, my computer has not had a CD, I don't have a CD, and I had a CD for years. some people are just try to call. I mean, there's really no good one way, because if there was one way to get you on a show, on a venue, that someone would have written that book, The Way to Get on a Show. So it's a matter of networking. It's a matter of being persistent. There's no secret ingredients.
So since like the coronavirus outbreak is a big thing right now, I was wondering, we were talking about in class, Dr. Ivan Festival, about insurance. So I'm just wondering, as far as like for your venues, like what kind of insurance do you have?
So
as far
it's definitely a hot topic. It's a real hot topic. So this is insurance companies apparently a couple years ago, when the SARS outbreak came out, made sure that pandemics are not covered in insurance. So the vast majority of insurance, actually, you are able to get insurance for a pandemic, but it would be a separate thing. Now, a year ago, I told you, what's your name? Denzel. So I would say, hey, Denzel, you're running this really expensive business, and I'm trying to sell you insurance. Do you want to pay an extra $15 a month for a pandemic? Man, you never know. Most likely you're going to say no, because it was like, who would believe that, we would be where we are right now? So, we were talking about it earlier. I mean, there's a thing called force majeure, where basically force majeure is a legal term that's really popular in the music business, and usually when we sign a contract, it's one of those things where you just skip over or mark off and nobody really takes care. And basically what it means is, if there's an act of God, if there's something that's beyond anyone's control, then both sides are basically freed from their commitments. So what's going on right now is, as a venue, okay, we have, let's say, 30 shows next month. And we have people that are not buying as many tickets because people are kind of unsure what's going on. And their artists are, and people are not spending as much money, and artists are saying, hey, you're canceling. So it's kind of a chicken of a mouse scenario for venues, because if we cancel on our own and saying, hey, we're not really selling tickets right now, and we feel it's a real risk for the public, we owe the artist the full amount of money. If the artist says, I don't feel comfortable touring right now, then they don't get the money, and we get a deposit back. However, if the state says, we're declaring a state of emergency and we're not allowing any gathering of any kind beyond 300 people, then the force majeure hits, and then you're separated. So the venue, and that's what's happening with festivals. That's why what's happening with South by. That's why they were waiting for so long, is because if South by canceled on their own, then they would owe all the money to all the sponsors and to everyone else. They had to wait for the city to declare a state of emergency, because once a state of emergency is declared, now the insurance could kick in. Now, the city may be getting more funding from the federal government that will allow the state to maybe support these promoters a little more. And same things with Coachella. I mean, they're just, who's going to blink first type of thing.
Just to amplify what he said, City Winery put out an email to many of their patrons explaining what their philosophy and what they're doing in these troubled times. And it's very specific, talking about how they changed their sanitation policy, talking to their employees, scheduling extra personnel, to the point where you go to a city winery, there's someone else opening the door for you, an employee. And then
let them die, as long as you're okay.
And they're monitoring the health of the staff so that hopefully they're not dying. But, I get a lot of emails, probably somewhere near the amount he gets, but from a different clientele. And it's the only venue I know that's taken this attitude and position. And of course, he mentions in his thing about how drinking wine has a positive antioxidant value as well as comforting the soul. So while there's a sales slight angle in there, I mean, the man is very, particular and taking the virus seriously.
We got a lot of great feedback because it's like you don't know. Do you want to be proactive and you want to message everyone that it's not happening? You know, the best thing we could do, and there's so many small businesses that are being hurt right now, as you guys can imagine. I mean,
But if I'm a patron and I bought tickets for a show and I'm a little nervous about going to the show, I can call you guys up, and what will you do?
we will give you a store credit, and so a couple things. If we offered on this letter that if anyone who does not feel comfortable, you'll not get your full refund back, but you'll get store credit, so you could come to any other show that you choose to. And then, of course, again, we're concerned for the patron. That's a real thing. We're in the live music business, and people interact, and there's a lot of elderly people and people mixing and eating and sharing food. And all we could do is really just do everything that we can to make sure that everyone feels safe, because it's as much as a psychological as it is physical, as we understand it right now.
I mean, kudos to you guys, because I don't know other venues that would do that, and our friends in the travel industry certainly wouldn't be as gracious as you guys are offering people.
Well, I'll tell you,
credit.
this came out yesterday. I'll tell you in a week or not if it was a good idea.
Well, if nothing else, it's fantastic PR.
Yeah.
Whether it's a sound financial decision, that's probably another conversation. But you guys are in it for the long haul, and you're opening a new venue, so any positive goodwill, I think, is right there. So you had a question.
Yeah, on a lighter subject, we were talking about opening acts and headliners. Do you find that comedy goes with music, or I don't care which one's the opener?
The quick question is yes. Our motto at City Winery is something that kind of a one-liner that we came up with, which I think it really sums up well what our experience is like. Is it's about indulging your senses. You know, going to see a live show and like you're hearing the music and you're seeing the wood and the warmth and you're tasting the food and you're smelling the wine and all this, and it's a really multi-senses thing. And I think there are a couple of acts that have toured that tour with comedians. I mean, Rhett Miller from the old 97s always has a comedian opening for him. I think it's a great thing. I mean, it used to be the case where, you have a lot of artists you have comedians opening for artists. Nothing wrong, and a good laugh at any time.
I know years ago there were two different audiences. It was hard.
I mean, we've, talking about niches, I mean, we've tried to do R&B and neo-soul for a long time, and people have just the audience has not come down to see shows at City Winery, and we've keep fighting it, and it does very well for us in Atlanta and Chicago and Atlanta. Same thing with comedy. I mean, comedy is kind of like a certain area in town. When we do Broadway, there's Broadway acts that come in town. They say, oh, we do 2 weeks in 54 Below. And that translates to 100 tickets downtown. So it's island kind of what I like to call, we're in the profession of basically educated guesses. We look at the information, we have instincts, and we guess what ticket prices should be. We guess what we should be paying an artist. We guess if this act could do well or not, and based on our history and the instincts, and hopefully you do better more times than not.
Could you get a little bit more into that? Because you mentioned using some history and so you're collecting. You mentioned you have your own ticketing, so you have collecting all the data, and you're recognizing this band is kind of like this band. So you're trying to artists.
We're trying to do that, but so people always ask, how do you choose what ticket prices will be? I mean, that's a kind of, is it arbitrary? I mean, are we just throwing out numbers? So we talked about before about an artist that needs to get paid $20,000 a guarantee. As a business, we know to be able to make money as a business, we need to be making $26,000 if we're paying an artist $20,000. If we know that we need to get to $26,000, what ticket prices will get you to $26,000? And we do 5 different tiers in all of our ticketing. So we'll do the stage premiere, which we believe that there's always 50 people who will pay substantially more money to see their favorite artist up close, and then scale it backwards. So when an agent said, hey, I have this artist touring, the question that I asked the agent is there any history, headline history? Because a lot of times they ask, oh, is there any history? Yeah, we sold out Sony Hall. Then I found out it was a radio promo thing, and yeah, there were 600 people over there, but all of them were invites. And now I know why there's only 50 people who bought tickets. So I asked, what is the history of the artist? What is the headline? When's the last time they played? What are suggested ticket prices, and then what is this golden number they need to reach? So it's a combination of usually working backwards based on the guarantee, and then just knowing the demo, knowing who. Most of our marketing is done through our email list as opposed to print ad or radio. So we kind of look historically what we've done more and what we feel our list would be into.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to ask, since you're a pitcher, how have you taken qualities on the field and applied them to your job, and how have those qualities helped?
Great question, because when you play sports in college, the coaches always tell you, you're going to get an advantage in life. You're going to learn lessons of life that you learn on the field. And actually, I've come to believe it. I mean, as a pitcher, stepping back, taking that extra breath, not getting all caught up with the drama. I think that's a big thing. I think for any athlete that applies to real life. Things tend to speed up when things are going bad, and taking a step back and just taking a breather. I think pitchers, with things that I like as a pitcher, is a lot of the psychological game, that you have with a hitter, and you're kind of looking for little cues and keys and stuff like that. So I try to apply that. I already know all your weaknesses, by the way. No. So it's just the pause, and I think dedication. Any athlete, or when you, in your case, a lot of you guys, I guess, are musicians, right? The fact that you are going to school and you have your regular life and you're giving the dedication and the time to do something that you love, it doesn't matter if you're a great musician or not, if you're going to be a professional musician or not, that by itself gives you an advantage over most people. Because I think, again, for me, baseball was a passion, and to be able to have a passion to go with a day job was key for me. To be able to have 3 hours a week or 10 hours a week where I'm not checking my phone, not checking my email, that I'm developing, that I would say, feeding another part of my brain. And this is true about musicians, about athletes, about artists, about anyone. It's most people don't have that dedication, and that dedication, if you like it or not, is going to translate to anything you do in life. And when you're in the gym at 6 a.m., 5 days a week, and then you work out, and then you go to classes, and you have another afternoon workout, and then you have to do your homework, and you're at college and you want to have some fun, guess what? That's impressive, and that will translate to anything you do. So not as necessarily as a pitcher, but as someone who's done something else that has a big passion. That was a big thing for me, and I think I love what I do. And there's definitely shitty stuff about what I do and long hours and all that stuff, but that passion, the fact that you're familiar with something that you love so much, I think hopefully it will translate into work.
So an agent tells you last time the artist was in town, he sold 600 tickets. Then you find out that all those tickets were actually given away. How does that work with your relationship with the agent? How does that make
it? Doesn't help.
Yeah.
And the way I say it is there's again the spectrum and the variety of how people conduct their business is very, very wide, because there's not one way of doing stuff. You are who your mentor is in the music business. If you're in radio, and you're an agent, if you're a manager, if you're a town buyer. So one would think that lying to me and me finding out, there's no long game. I mean, the same agent, assuming has multiple artists and wants to do business with you, and now we have 7 venues. So if you lie to me, guess what? I'm not going to book your artist next time. And guess what? I'm going to actively call all my other buyers that work with me so they don't get duped into doing the same thing. Now there's stuff that, but there's also, not every show is successful. Let's say Marty Diamond, who's a big agent, he represents anywhere from like Fun to David Gray to Coldplay, right? Those artists were not what they are right now, and there's certain trust. So there's certain trust with certain agents that give you good stuff that they may sell you something, and by the time the show plays, they're probably not representing them anymore because it didn't work out the way you do. So there is a certain trust and risk, but the lying stuff, it does happen once in a while, and I have no problem telling that person, to go whatever. And
What would you say is the most successful or well-known genre for City Winery in New York?
I would say the singer-songwriter, classic rock type of genre. Although our biggest show by far was Prince, I would say, so that doesn't fall necessarily in that category. I truly believe, and I try to pitch it and that's I think why we've got over the years such a diversified kind of talent. There's no such thing as a just standing room show. I think if you present it smartly and you bring in the right band with the right configuration, every genre could play at City Winery. I mean, we've had Wyclef Jean do, a kind of, or RZA do like a kind of small, condensed, kind of smaller show, and we've had Tower of Power with 20 people on stage, jam on. It's breaking the boundaries of what people think Supper Club. Another thing of why Supper Club, we didn't invent that genre.
You consider City Winery a supper club?
It is. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, but Supper Club historically, Supper Club meaning a place where you eat dinner and watch a show.
And wear a suit and tie.
Without the suit and tie, but traditionally those places have always been opened by restaurateurs.
Right. And
restaurateurs, it's like the classic thing, if you're an NBA player, you want to play baseball. If you're Eddie Vedder, you want to talk about this. You don't want to talk about it. Everyone wants to be something else.
Yep.
And chefs who open up supper clubs have traditionally, all they care about is food, and they don't have this kind of, I would say, sensitivity to the artist and making sure that the artist feels at home and that the listening experience is to be. For them, it's all about pushing food, which is why we had such a hard time booking shows at City Winery that were otherwise theater shows, theater artists, someone like Natalie Cole or someone like Ricky Lee Jones, who would never play a supper club because anywhere they played, including the bottom line, was always like a very loud. Servers were wearing clickety-clack, heels and moving around and not being respectful to everyone else. So we had to kind of break that stigma of what a supper club is. That, guess what? If you have questions about the menu and you're sitting this close to the artist, our as much as I want to make as much money for City Winery, our server is not going to have a discussion with you about the menu during the show when you're 2 feet from the artist. I mean, that's how close artists are. So taking these calculated risks and changing the culture of what people think Supper Club was a big key for us to get most of the acts that we get today.
You would.
Another question. How long did it take to build the following that you have now, the support with customers, and did you start like in a densely populated area, like a city?
Well, we started in New York, in not a densely populated area. Most venues that open don't open up in a high-end place because it's a massive space and we don't have money to start with. What I think, again, something that I'm very proud of what City Winery has become is I always thought of a regular as, or someone who has a regular as, the person who goes to the, neighborhood bar and shoots the shit with a bartender and drinks, $2 beers. Or I see a regular as, I love coming to the same diner and having the same sandwich every day. We actually have regulars at City Winery, and because we build a community. It's because people feel real connection. I mean, we have this membership that's called Vinophile membership that you pay $99 a year and you don't pay credit card fees and you get to buy tickets before the public. And those $99 have bought us a loyalty that every brand wants. And these people pay $99 and walking around thinking that they own the joint. I mean, but that's what you want as a patron. And we have people who come to see 5-6 shows a month and spend hundreds of dollars because they met their best friends at the City Winery, and they come back and they always sit in the same place, and they buy presents, Christmas and Hanukkah presents for our staff. I mean, when was the last time you bought anything to anyone in a music club or a restaurant? You don't. So we're really about this kind of interpersonal relationship. So I would say that's kind of how we've established our fan base, and we have a very loyal folks and care, and it gives us it's a double-edged sword, because the more you give them as far as feeling at home and feeling hospitable and going above and beyond to try to accommodate their needs, the more they'll be demanding. But as someone who's in hospitality, that's ultimately what you want. Is you want someone to kind of feel that connection with the place, and it's not just 4 walls with a City Winery sign.
Yeah.
In ballpark, what's the rent per month, and what's the square foot?
I know this because our build out in our new City Winery is so big. Michael came to me last week. He's like, it cost us $375 an hour to be open every hour, and actually, if you take the fact that we're not open from midnight to 7 a.m., it's $700 an hour. That's our rent.
Wow.
That's a lot of money.
And then 30 days, 30 days a month.
And that doesn't include my salary, everyone's salary, doesn't include the cost of food, doesn't include everything. That's a lot of money. Now, New York is extreme, but it ain't cheap. I mean, all of our locations are a minimum of 25,000 square feet.
So the one thing I think City Winery's done is great brand identification, and with that you build a loyal following, the $99 people, and it's more than just them being able to buy City Winery wine or a branded T-shirt or something. So you guys have figured out a way of doing a classic line extension. So beyond just going to City Winery, you've been able to do events outside of the 4 walls. To witness the fact that while you guys were homeless, you still had shows that continued the brand, but there's things that are identified as Michael Dorfer, City Winery Presents. And
I mean, we're showing presence. I mean, exactly. We all think, and that's a good humbling experience. I mean, we all have certain scenarios in our life. Oh, like they're not going to be able to ever survive without us or without me, or how can this person even? It's a real humbling experience to go through a process where, you like it or not, City Winery closed, artists still need a place to play, and people will still go see live music, and you'll just become this fade out, this kind of like, oh, remember City Winery. So during the 8 months that we were closed, we continued to build on a relationship with an artist and with the fans, and we were presenting shows all over the city to try to continue to have. It wasn't really a money-making thing for us, but again, to be able to have City Winery Presents and to be able to send out emails once a week with shows, and to be able to come and see some of the artists that over the years have become friends with, and to go visit them and to them see that kind of still connectivity, I think goes hand in hand with what we feel we are.
But you've also been able to, with the brand extension, create special events.
Yeah, I mean, we do these annual Carnegie Hall shows where we play homage to living legends. So we've done Rolling Stones and The Who and Paul Simon and Led Zeppelin and so on and so forth. And we basically take 21 artists, all performing one song of their favorite artist in Carnegie Hall, which is, probably one of the most famous venues in the world. And we raise $100,000 for music education programs. And we have a concept that we really believe at City Winery, which is called selfish philanthropy, because it's basically we're doing this to be able to build the relationship with the artist and to be able to do these high-profile shows, but to use this and actually raise money for causes that we believe in. And we've been able to get some of the top artists in the world to be able to come to play in these shows for $1,000 to play one song, when these artists sometimes get hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think for a couple of reasons. One, we've had a great tradition and we create a really comfortable environment for the artists that are coming to play. They're playing for a great cause, and they know that a lot of these tributes that you see, people end up spending so much money and paying themselves so much that they end up writing a $2,000 check for charity, and we actually write $100,000 worth of checks. And it helps that a lot of these artists, even some of the biggest artists in the world, have never played Carnegie Hall. So we're giving them the opportunity to play Carnegie Hall. So we've doing these, and we produced last week, I don't know if you've ever heard of Harry Belafonte. So he celebrated his 93rd birthday, and we did a show with him in the Apollo Theater, which was a great experience. And it's using these relationships that we've established through City Winery to be able to call an artist directly and say, hey, are you willing to do this? And most of them pretty much say yes. And of course it helps that we live in New York City, where there's so much great talent that lives here. That also helps.
What you look back, what would you say was one of your better successes that you're most proud of, as far as in your current role at City Winery?
I think breaking the glass ceiling and what people thought would be show or artists that would play in a 300-seat room.
Any particular artist that comes to mind that you?
I mean, we've had, let's see, James Taylor, we've had Neil Young, we've had Prince, like I said, we've had Stone Temple Pilots, we've had Deer Tick. I mean, just a whole variety. So I think there's just, and once you break that ceiling, you're able to get these artists to play, then no one could say, the question is always like, who else played, this room? So I was like, oh, well, here's all the people that played. And then I'm really proud of how we've been able to use our brand, and we've established ourselves as such a great place for musicians that we're doing more of these City Winery tours, where we basically take an artist, and we did 30 nights with Joan Armatrading, and she knows that she comes to City Winery, she gets treated well, she gets paid well. And remember, if you're a big artist, even if you're playing Madison Square Garden, every single day you're playing a different venue. You never get to enjoy the city you're playing in. You're sleeping in because you're a rock and roller. You then go to sound check. You play the show on the same stage with the same lighting, with the same blah, blah, blah. You pack in, you go into your tour bus, you go drive all night, and then you do the same thing the next day. What we're creating is basically taking an artist that would normally play 2,000-seat theaters and say, you know what? We have City Winery in New York, in Boston, in Philadelphia, in DC, in Chicago, in Nashville, in Atlanta. All great places. We're going to take you out for 30 days. We're going to have you play 4 nights in each venue. So after the first night, where you get to sound check and do what I just said that you do every single day, the next 3 days, you don't have to come to sound check. You don't have to do load in. You don't have to load out. You get to go shopping in your favorite clothing store in Soho. You go to the fish market, you go to the High Line, you go to hang out, you get to hang out with your friends for 3 or 4 days. There's something very refreshing for those artists to be able to do 3 or 4 nights in the same place. And we're recreating the same exact experience in every City Winery. So really the only other venue or brand that does it is Live Nation. Because Live Nation says, okay guys, and we're not Live Nation, but they're saying, Lumineers, here's $25 million. You're only playing Live Nation venues all over the United States. I don't care what history you have, you're only playing with us. We're not really doing that. And someone says, oh, I actually have a history in the Birchmere in DC and you're not playing. I'm not saying right now, currently saying, screw you, we're doing all or nothing, because that's not my personality. And I don't think we're paying enough to be able to demand that. But how great it is to be able to see a poster with 26 nights with the Magnetic Fields, which is, one of my favorite bands. And to be able to kind of see all that and seeing, wow, they're playing 7 different cities, 26 nights, and basically taking, it used to be, oh my God, Shlomo just called and I have to do this favor and I'm just playing New York. Now it's like, okay, well, if you're doing a favor to play New York, we'll also route you through Philadelphia and Boston and DC. So those, I would say, getting these underplay shows with underplay meaning an artist that plays much bigger rooms to play small rooms, and the City Winery tours are probably the two.
Denzel had a question. You want to know, who would you love to book for City Winery? It's on your wish list.
Eddie Vedder, who's playing a private event unless it cancels on May 7th.
Cancel.
So I see that at Stoll's playing City Winery. I don't care how, somehow I'll get him in. So we got him in through that way.
It's the San Diego connection.
It's Pearl Jam. I mean, there's very few bands I was exposed to as a kid in Israel. There's, again, one radio station. That's why all Israelis love Suzanne Vega. For some reason, Suzanne Vega is one of those artists that has always played on the radio. And when people say, "Oh, do you think you're ever gonna get person?" I just say it's just a matter of time, way, angle. I'll find a way to get someone in. I would say Eddie Vedder is kind of on the soul.
Okay, so we talked about your wish list. We talked about your successes. What would you look back and say, what was a misjudgment that you did?
I can't take full ownership on the full blame because I didn't make that decision, but I would definitely say that opening up City Winery in Napa was a massive failure for us. Napa is a small town north of San Francisco that cannot support a bodega, and we decided to open up a venue and do 7 shows a week over there. And I don't know if you've ever seen Tarantino, like old Japanese horror movies where there's like blood splashing all over the place. We were bleeding money that way. Just like, we learned a humble lesson, and we quit while we were behind. And for 5 years after we closed, we were still paying rent. So that was a big mistake.
What about booking?
It's funny, I don't know if most of you guys know, but the band War, which some of you guys may not know, but I could play 20 songs and you'd be like, oh, that's War? Which is part of a big reason why they probably have more 100 top hit list, songs than any other band, but we lost our pants on that one.
Because you think identity?
People just didn't know who they were. Which is crazy, but again, and it was I would say early on. I was venting to you. We have Daughtry playing City Winery in April. Looks like that may be the new biggest loser of all time for us, unless we have 5 weeks to change it. We're losing big on that, but that's a perfect example that So a lot of these reality TV shows stars do massive numbers outside the big cities.
Right.
Because it's usually markets that don't really get to see a lot of celebrities, and they don't work hard as like New Yorkers, and they are home by 5 and they have lots of time to watch TV. So these American Idols, and all these kind of stars sell 2,000-3,000 tickets in the market. But then they come play in the big cities and they're worth 100 tickets. So we thought Daughtry, since I think he's one of the few reality stars that moved on and actually had his own pretty successful solo career.
Yep.
That we could maybe change that, but we're failing so far.
So knowing that, and it's 5 weeks out, what, as the marketing guy also, what are you doing? What is your 5-week plan?
Well, the funny thing is, there's always that battle between marketing and booking, right? It's like a professional. Again, I'll use another analogy from a professional, team. If you win the championship, the players did a phenomenal job, man. The players really stepped up and played great. If you lose, have a shitty season, it's like, this coach is horrible, right? So Same thing with the marketing and programming. If the show sells out, oh man, we did a great job booking the show. If the show bombs and does terrible, God, we got to replace these marketing people. They don't know what they're doing. So to answer your question, 5 weeks out, what we're doing is we called the agent, told him he's a piece of shit for selling us a show. Then after we got that out of the system, we asked to have a call with a manager, and then we kind of try to drive a marketing plan. And I think, of course, they're like, why aren't you spending money on radio? And like, guess what? We're a 300 capacity room. We don't really have, if you're playing Madison Square Garden, there is a budget line that says $15,000 or $10,000 goes to radio. And there's, if you go see a show at Forest Hills, there's $25,000 dedicated for the first 4 shows to do marketing in all the subway stations. When you're a 300 capacity room, you have $250 to do Facebook ads. That's the type of kind of variation. So I think we had Daughtry put together a little video saying how excited to play City Winery in the new room. That didn't really sell too many tickets. We're probably going to have to spend some money on marketing, and ultimately, in my head, we're going to do one of 2 things. We're going to try to condense it, maybe 2 shows into one, and make one of the shows go away and focus on one show, or ask for a deduction, which agents hate hearing the word deduction. But guess what? I always pitch, we're in this ecosystem, right? I hate when agents tell me, oh, what are you talking about? We gave you these sellouts. No. We together gave your artist because of your artist who's giving us the business, we gave him a sellout together, as opposed to an agent's kind of talking you down. There's a lot of like kind of sub battles between agent and managers and venues, and it's your fault, it's not your fault. So there's a bunch of layers I don't want to necessarily.
Would you go to Groupon?
No. So Groupon is, Groupon used to be a big thing for us. Groupon cheapens the brand. And that's a good question as far as, let's say there's a show, there's only 200 people sold, but we want to make sure the room is full because we make the money from F&B, from selling food and beverages. And we want to do giveaways and we want to do discount tickets. It's really important not to be able to, not to hit the same list that you sold the tickets to and say, hey, we're doing 2 for 1 or 50% off, because people are like, what is this? Now I feel like a sucker because I paid full price. And now you have a pattern where people are now waiting too late to buy tickets. So we have to find other creative ways that don't cheapen our brand, that we could still get people in the room, still collect some money, and so there's a balance act there.
Last week we had Jarell here from the PNC, and it's her understanding, and it seems to be Live Nation's normal, is they use Groupon all the time.
Live Nation cares a little less about what the people think about it. They think about the bottom line much more than we do. And when you're trying to move, if you're trying to move 15,000 tickets or 10,000 tickets, I would probably care a little less about Groupon. I would just, because the show is bombing. If City Winery undersells, I could probably move and take away some tables and chairs. Guess what? If you're playing an arena and you sold only 50 seats up front, good luck trying to hide.
Point. Couple of questions from the peanut gallery here. Crystal wanted to know, because you're involved in marketing and programming, how important is it to market via social media platforms? And are there certain ones you seem to favor more than others, or is it just marketing anywhere to reach your audience?
I think we have we have to be able to cast a net and I would say a wider or smaller net. For the most part, Facebook and Instagram are our best friends, especially Facebook, because any marketing that you could see, okay, I put X amount of dollars and it gave me this amount of return, is a great tool to have, right? I mean, there's certain markets like Atlanta where people drive a lot, and even though you can't judge if someone bought a ticket from listening to a radio station, any promoter will tell you to be able to sell a ticket, for the most part, you have to touch people 3 times. It's usually I heard it on the radio, I saw it somewhere in a paper, in a magazine, or some billboard. A friend told me I bought a ticket, or I heard on the radio, I got hit one time, and I got an email, and then I saw a Facebook ad, I bought a ticket. It's very rarely that people buy a ticket on the first time. So you have to be able to, when you market it, and even though not everything you do will have a exact return or a return that is measurable, you need to be able to catch the net and know that, from me, any city I go, any paper I open, if it's the New Yorker, New York Times, if it's a weekly street magazine, the first thing I do is I look at the music ads. I look at who's playing where. Most people are not active consumers, right? I'm in the business, that's what I do. I would say the average Joe does not, first thing they do, move back to, move to that ad. So how do you get in front of them multiple times? And we feel with our 300 capacity, we should always, in our minds, we should always sell 300 tickets. We feel that there's always 300 people who are going to want to go see good music. Do we sell it every single time? No, because we're not able to really reach most people. Where are those people? How do I get to you in your home? How do I create this path in this world filled of noise and other information to be able to get you? So for us, it's just a matter of, we didn't do a good job to get to those people as opposed to anything else. So there's I don't know if that answers, but we try to diversify as much as possible. Email, a lot of Facebook, and we also partner with WFUV, which we feel has a really close alignment with our brand and with the type of music. And
this is kind of a combination question. It goes kind of back to the Daughtry thing. When you're marketing your tickets, do you feel that you are marketing to sell that artist, or are you relying on the artist to bring the fans into your establishment?
If you're just relying on artists, you're a fool, because you have to be able to have a base, right? And but that's a great question, especially with City Winery. Most of the artists that play City Winery, the Steve Earls, the Sinead O'Connors, the whatever, they don't have social media. They don't, and these days everyone from age 2 to 90 use Facebook, but still, most people don't have following and they don't have a way to do it. So we have to rely on ourselves. Whereas what has been extremely successful for us in the past year and a half is podcasts. Podcast is like the perfect programming for us. It has almost no production needs. Someone with a microphone. I know for a fact that this person has 50,000 downloads, a month. In my area, I know exactly where those downloads are because that information is available for me. Guess what? They'll be talking about playing City Winery on their podcast. So those have become kind of our favorite type of programming, and we're doing more and more of those and it's folks that are crazy stuff like a podcast that talks about sub characters in Disney movies and stuff. I didn't even know that even exists. But they have a loyal following and they have a direct path to those followers. So we do look at social and we do look at following. I think it's much more relevant for some of the other venues in town that have up and coming, that are much more engaged with their fan base. Daughtry is probably more does have a following, but they're not as enthusiastic as they were for a younger kind of hipper band. It's part of the equation, but specifically for us with our core audience, we have to find other ways and not rely just on their social media, because I could harp all day. Can you please put a post? But if he has 15 followers, it really doesn't move the needle.
How far in advance are you booking?
So to add another layer of challenges for our specific job, we have to share our space with private events. So I'll give you an example because an artist once asked me, when we do a show, a sold out show, and let's say we netted $4,000 on the concert and we sold $14,000 worth of F&B. We walked out at the venue after we paid salaries and the barbacks and the minimum wage, all that. We walked on a sold-out show, packed house, 350 people, 2 hours drinking and eating. We walked out with about $2,000 net. There comes a corporate event, and you want 15 servers, you're paying for 15 servers. You want crystal glassware, you get glassware. The client pays for everything, so the margins on profit are much, 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 much higher on private events than there are shows. As a result, and because we do a lot of these private events, we have to share the calendar with them, and that puts a lot of added pressure on concerts, because the first 2 weeks, for example, of December are hot dates for private events, for holiday parties. So normally we book about 4 or 5 months out, but depending on the month. July and August, we're not going to have any buyouts, any private events. We could book as many shows as we want, and it's still hard because most artists don't want to tour in the summer, so we do that way in advance. January, February, not that strong for private events, so we book way in advance. But like March, April, May, June, October, November, December, we have to leave certain dates open. Like Saturdays are for weddings for the most part, but weddings way in advance. Corporate events usually are Wednesdays and Thursdays, so normally the threshold, if there's nothing booked on a date that's not the first week of December, 2.5 months out, we have the right to fill the date. And ultimately, it falls on us to fill the date. Whereas the first 2 weeks of December, we have to wait up until a month out. So sometimes 3 weeks out, private events department says, okay, booking, sorry, we weren't able to book any private events on these 4 dates. And now it's up to us to fill those dates last minute, which is a lot of pressure. Because again, no dark nights. Because my boss feels like if we had a dark night, you lost $12,000, because that's the $12,000 that we could have done on F&B. So, and we paid rent, and you still had to pay salaries and all that stuff. So it's a lot of juggling. There's no clean fact. I mean, Sundays for the most part are not for private events, so we book those way in advance. If it's a really big show, that's another advantage of having music people owning a music venue as opposed to someone else. If there's a really, really hot show, rarely do private events take precedent over a show, because it's such a cool show. If it was a different non-music person, they would only think about bottom line. So not always the most smart decision from a business, but again, we're music people and we love the music.
Zachary was talking about climate change, and you want to know what kinds of environmental sustainability programs does City Winery venues have?
Great question. Very important for us. Well, for the first thing, all of our wine is vegan and no sulfites, and we've saved, I think we've calculated, we saved hundreds of thousands of bottles and glass and packaging, because we go straight from the barrel straight to the tap system. So that's one. No plastic straws. We don't provide any plastic bottles backstage in any City Winery, so we have reusable branded, so people could also take it on the road. And again, we've done a lot. We do this thing called, it's a company retreat where we send every year all of our top managers. Last year was 130 people. We sent people to New Orleans. We've sent people to Puerto Rico after the big storm to really help with our efforts to clean up and to help the farmers that got hurt pretty badly from the storms a couple of years ago. So a lot of and again, we raise a lot of money for a lot of brands, and a lot of causes are really important for us, because we do feel as a brand that's we're not just 4 walls and a sign, where we feel that we have a lot of social consciousness and a lot of social responsibilities. So I don't know, we do our best.
One of the other questions was, how much involved do you get in the other venues? Do you have to travel and go to and see these other
I do travel. I probably travel less than what I need to because, again, if you're an artist, when we do these city winery tours, I try to tour as much as possible. Again, having an artist walk into a city winery after seeing me years in New York, walk into a city winery in Atlanta, and I'm there to greet him or her, gives that person so much satisfaction because it's some kind of similarity. And like I said in the beginning, one of the biggest challenges when we're growing a business like ours, within 10 years we have now 7 locations. The construction is challenging, but you learn how to scale it. You learn how to, you learn how to do the different SOPs and how to train the kitchen, what menus do we want and what posters do we want. What you can't really teach is the culture, and that's something that's really important for me and really important for the company. So being able to go to other city wineries and to really, I would say, spread out our philosophy on how we feel artists should be treated and how we feel what our approach is probably our biggest challenge. So I do tour a lot to spend some time with our programmers. I spend time interacting with artists that know me and just making sure that they're doing okay. Walking around, just seeing certain stuff that other people don't see from, are we promoting the right shows? Do we have the right postcards are? Do we, again, one of those things that really bothers me, talking about, in my OCD, is you come to a show, you bought $100 tickets, you come to a show at 7 o'clock, you spend your time, you decide you have so many options, you spend 3 hours in our establishment, you spend another $150 on a great meal and wine. The show ends, artist comes back on stage, standing ovation. Wow, what a great experience. The absolute thing that I hate as someone who goes to see shows is some fakakta server or manager who wants to go home, turns out the light all the way up. For me, that's like, fuck you. I just spent 4 hours with you, spent such great money, and you just turn on the lights. Oh, that, for me at least, that ruins my whole experience.
Well, what about if it's the early show and you're trying to turn the house for the late show?
We rarely do double shows, again, out of the choice, because I don't want to be chasing the artist out of the green room. I don't want to be chasing, most people disappear from the venue within 20, when we open, we envision people are going to go show up at 6 o'clock in the evening, spend 2 hours, then watch a show, then hang out 2 hours after. That obviously doesn't happen. Most people disappear. But that 30 seconds, instead of turning the light all the way up, you just slowly, gradually, for me, makes an experience, a good experience, a bad experience. I've gotten fired 3 times from restaurants being a server because I am so conscious of the music that's playing in the background that I've changed music and take over the playlist, and the owner ends up firing me because it was like, fuck this, I have a vision and you're ruining it for me, or people don't care. So a playlist, you have people come with different types of tastes of music, which is great. I love all music. In case someone asks me what music I like all music. But there's certain music that's not appropriate. If I'm sitting in a singer-songwriter vibe and someone pops in some really cheesy pop song after the set, it's, we're trying to create an experience. An experience has, like I said before, there's so many steps. When I do the training, when we open up new city wineries, I just say, there's so many ways to ruin an experience for a show. Let's say, I'm taking you through the path real quick. You book a show, you paid lots of money, you did all your research, everything is great. You book the show, the agent now gets the contract, sends it to the manager sends it to the tour manager, the artist on the road. You think I made the good show? No, there's the person who's advancing the hospitality, the person who's doing the production advance, the content manager that did, some people could complain it could be a great show. They got the wrong order in the green room, and that's what they remember because they played so many shows. There were only 2 loaders to load out for the band instead of 3 like promised. That's the only thing they'll remember. So there's, during a course of a show, from booking 5 months out, throughout leading up to, all the way to, if my production manager did not convey that we don't have parking for the bus, and the bus driver shows up the day of the show, that's what's going to ruin the person. So ruin the show. So it's again a cliche, but you really need a village to be able to put a great show on, because there's so many ways to good thing wrong. The most important person in the room when a show is not me. It's not it's the production manager. If he did a shitty job on the sound, if he turned on the light too much,
So I was going to say, how do you control your hiring people for these different venues? As you said, at the end of a cool evening, somebody plays a cheesy pop song. How do you instill that in somebody, saying you're going to screw this up?
And even if you install it, I mean, how do you now instill that in 7 different cities?
And how do you explain to them what cheese is if they don't have the same point of reference as you?
I'm doing the same thing. I sit and I look into their soul, and I say, yeah, and because most people don't think about it. Most people are not aware.
No, they're not going to think about it. I think Katy Perry's cool. It's fine to play that at the end of a show that's a singer-songwriter. I'll play Katy Perry. How do you explain to me or that person?
I say, you're out of here. No, so
well, fine, but
no, listen.
You got to trust that person in Nashville.
You got to trust, and most people who come, and we're now hiring for City Winery New York. We're hiring 220 people.
Oof.
220 people that any one of them could impact.
They could mess it up.
A busser,
a loud waiter who's going to take the order while
anything could change. So it comes down to like really being sincere and repetition, and having someone like me or someone in my position, like a programmer who's not part of the show, active. When I go see a show and someone in my position goes see a show, we're not pulling bottles for a server. We're not going to the kitchen finding out why there's something that's kind of floating. We're there just to we're the ambience setters, So we're looking at stuff and we're observing stuff, and then hopefully the next day trying to give some creative feedback and good feedback for the folks. But shit happens all the time, and
right.
For me, it's just like,
York.
What else is happening that I have no idea of?
Right. Somebody turned the house lights on too quick.
Every business. I mean, that's why business owners end up having no life and really spending all their time in their business, because A, they're paranoid that someone's stealing from them, and 2, no one really could give nobody shares exactly the same vision.
Do the other locations have the $99 membership deal?
Yep.
So and are they transferable?
You could use your membership to buy tickets in any City Winery.
That's great.
And you could buy tickets for other people too, which we sometimes catch people that are trying to, scalpers that are, buying 10 tickets without paying credit card fees. And again, you know what I do? I spend at least 2 phone calls a week. Someone sends me a note. Oh, I see that they're selling your tickets on StubHub or something, or some third. I call these people and say, "I'm sorry, sir. Unfortunately we're canceling your membership because you abused it," or "I'm sorry, you're basically overselling your ticket. Unfortunately, we're going to issue you a refund to your ticket. We're not allowing you to sell it." So we care about those things.
Unlike other companies.
But yeah.
Adam asked the question, do you see yourself, or do you covet one day that you move on to something bigger?
I feel really good with where I am. I mean, I over the years I've taken on more and more responsibilities. I could probably get paid 3 times as much being in Live Nation. For me, someone's been in the job for a long time. One of the most important things for me in a job is I want to be close to the center. I want to know what's going on. I want to be part of the decision making. I want to know that I have a direct impact on the business, and I'm been there since day one. We continue to grow. We continue to do stuff outside of our normal kind of comfort zone. I'm never bored. Do I ever want to work a little less? Yes. But to answer your question, I mean, I'm happy with where I am, and I have no desire currently to put all my money in risk. I think and risk having my own.
I think the first part of your answer might have something to do with your background as a team player and your athletics, and that the way you want to be involved in from the get-go, and you're a pivotal member of a team.
I mean, we all been in a position where if you don't know what's going on, the voices in your head start, being louder and louder. Like, what's going on? Are we going under? Are we not going under? Are we being bought? Or are we not being bought? Is he angry or not being angry? All these conversations you have in your head, which if you're sitting in the table,
right,
you're aware of, and you know what's going on. And I think has always been a key thing for me, because I've been in the other side, and I've been where I don't have control. If there's something that I don't like in the company, I have the control to change it, and not all my money is invested on, I'm not going to be rewarded as much as someone who owns 51% of the company, but I'm also not putting my livelihood. I think it just depending on the type of people. Some people, my younger brother, sold marijuana when he was 14 years old, and he was never able to work after that because I have to work for myself all my life, right? I never had that. I have no problem working for someone else. Kind of a weird analogy. Sorry about that, but I feel comfortable with where I am. So
and
maybe I'll decide to go play pro again. No.
But you know how privileged you are and how unique a situation it is, because there are many people who would, cut part of their fingers off to have the situation you have.
And there's many aspects of my job that I hate, like everyone else. But it's rock and roll. I could dress like this. I could, listen to great music. I interact with great people all the time, and I'm part of a business that brings joy to people, and I see that all the time, and it's something has a lot of rewards.
Well, I think all of us here can feel the same way about you being here tonight, and want to thank you for coming out tonight and doing this.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. Keep your eye on your emails for the next exciting class. Thank you.
Excuse me, everybody, because this might be his last class ever. Can everybody just come down? I want to get a picture of Marconi with all of you here. Come on down.